My son said he would take me to the clinic, but he took me to court to take away my license. I realized it when the car turned left instead of right, and the glass doors read Superior Court, not Family Medical. He parked neatly, like the careful boy I taught to parallel on Oak Street, then came around to open my door as if courtesy could soften a betrayal. "Just a hearing, Mom," Mark said. "Quick. No big deal." No big deal? I felt for my purse the way you reach for a railing in the dark. The courthouse smelled like old paper and winter coats, even in June. He walked fast. I kept up. I've been keeping up for 71 years. Inside, a clerk called names without looking up. Mark handed her forms, already filled. Guardianship, fitness to drive. He used the voice he saves for strangers, the one that makes him sound like a good son. "She's been unsafe," he said. Confused. "Unsafe?" I repeated. "Last month I drove you to your dentist when your car battery died." He didn't meet my eyes. "This is different. It's about protecting you. Protecting me." The words tasted like chalk. When I opened my wallet for my ID, I saw the photo of Daniel tucked behind it. The one where his hand rests on the hood of the old Buick, smiling at the shine we worked into it every Saturday. I heard him again, quiet as a Sunday. "Don't let anyone shrink your life, Ellie." A woman in a navy suit touched my elbow. "Mrs. Lawson? The judge will see you now." Mark squeezed my shoulder. "Don't make this hard." "I'm not the one making it hard," I said. My voice stayed calm, but I felt the tremor underneath, like a train coming long before the track starts to sing. How could my own son decide that my independence was disposable? In the small courtroom, the judge glanced at the papers. Concerns include missed appointments, near collisions, leaving the stove on. I folded my hands. "Your Honor, may I speak?" My son's pen hovered above another signature line, certain I would sit quietly while he closed the door on my life. He didn't know the stove story had a timer involved. He didn't know about the assessment I'd already taken with a driving therapist or the letter in my bag. He didn't know whose dash cam captured that near collision and who was actually at fault. I turned my face toward the bench and felt something settle in me, firm and steady. They thought they'd cornered an old woman into surrender. They never imagined I'd spent weeks preparing, counting each insult like steps on a staircase up and out. "Before we begin," I said, there are a few things the court should hear. But to understand how it all began and why my son believed he could take the keys from my hand, I have to go back to the beginning. 8 weeks before the courthouse, I stood at my kitchen window watching cardinals bounce from the lilac bush to the fence. Morning light hit the sink in a way that showed every water spot, so I polished it. Because there are things you can still control, a streak on a faucet, the angle of a picture frame, the way a day starts. I'd baked banana bread for Lily, my granddaughter, because on Thursdays she comes for Rummy with her mother, and there's always a slice wrapped in foil for Lily's backpack when she leaves. The phone rang. I wiped my hands. "Yes? Ellie, hi, it's Victoria. Can we switch Thursday to Friday? The realtor can only do today." "Realtor?" The word landed like a marble in a glass. "Oh," she laughed a practiced little laugh. "Not for your house, for ours. We're thinking about a bigger place, with a yard for Lily." "That's lovely," I said. Friday is fine." After we hung up, I wrote the word realtor on the pad by the phone, then circled it. It wasn't suspicion, not yet. It was something softer and more ordinary. The sense that a piece was missing, the way you know a puzzle is one blue sky short. That afternoon, I drove to my dentist. On the way home, a pickup ran a yellow and then a red, and everyone slammed brakes. I stopped well short. The car behind me didn't. It tapped my bumper. The driver, a boy with freckles and a baseball cap, rushed over, apologizing. "My fault, ma'am." Honest. We exchanged insurance. I took photos. An older man on the sidewalk waved. "That light's a trap," he said. "Half this town runs it." When I told Mark about it, he frowned at my hands. "That's why we worry?" "I wasn't hit hard," I said. "I was alert enough to stop." He shook his head. "It's the pattern, Mom. The pattern." That week, my stove timer buzzed while I was in the yard deadheading geraniums. The soup simmered, safe, but Victoria came in with Lily after school, sniffed at the air like a bloodhound, and later told Mark I'd left the stove on unattended. And I did forget one appointment, but the clinic had changed locations and sent the notice to the wrong address. I called and rescheduled. The nurse apologized. I wrote that down too. I started keeping a notebook. I dated each page. I wrote what I cooked, where I drove, what time I took my blood pressure pills. I wrote the names of cashiers and the topics of conversations. Because detail is the best alibi against revision. It wasn't paranoia, it was insurance. The realtor showed up anyway. I found her card on my hall table under the porcelain bowl that holds keys and spare change. The card still smelled faintly of orange blossom perfume. I hadn't invited her. When I called the number, a bright voice answered, "Miranda speaking." "Miranda," I said. "This is Eleanor Lawson. You left your card on my table." "Oh, Mrs. Lawson," she said, chirpy and smooth. "It was such a pleasure to meet you." "Your house is a dream." "I didn't meet you," I said. There was a silence so brief you could miss it if you weren't listening for it. "Of course," she said. "I meant, your daughter-in-law showed me around." "We only peeked. We didn't touch anything lovely," I said, tasting iron. "Thank you for letting me know." After I hung up, I sat with Daniel's photo in my hand. It was taken the day we paid off the mortgage. He holds the deed like it's a diploma. We framed the copy and put the original in the safe deposit box. I made a fresh pot of tea and opened the folder where I kept letters, bills, warranties. I found the deed copy and the beneficiary forms we updated after Daniel died. I read every line. Then I called the bank and made an appointment at the elder law clinic that shares a hallway with a church thrift store. When a person tries to shrink your world, you enlarge your map. At the clinic, a woman in a simple gray dress shook my hand. "I'm Mei Chen," she said. "What brings you?" "Change," I said, "and people who like to push it faster than I do." She listened. She didn't condescend. She asked if I drove myself, if I felt safe. I told her yes. She suggested a driving rehabilitation evaluation anyway. "Not to prove anything to your family," she said. "To prove it to a court if you need to." I'd taught Sunday school with her mother. I trusted her because she never hurried me, but never let me drift off into story for the sake of story. She wrote down names. She asked if I had recordings. "Recordings?" "Depending on our state laws," she said, "you might be allowed to record conversations you're part of without telling the other person." It's not about gotchas. It's about accuracy. I left with a checklist. Evaluation appointment with a certified driving therapist, letters from my doctor, a cognitive screening, copies of my home insurance and maintenance logs, and a plan to move my home into a living trust that required 2 signatures, mine and a successor trustee's, before anything could be sold. The clinic's paralegal copied my deed and beneficiary forms and noted small errors to fix. On the way home, I bought a tiny recorder at the pharmacy next to the readers and birthday cards. It was the size of a stick of gum. 2 days later, Mark called. "Mom, can I borrow your car?" "Mine's in the shop." "Of course," I said. When he came to pick it up, I handed him the keys and bent low to hug Lily. "Love you, Nana," she said into my sweater. "Love you more," I whispered, and slid the recorder into my pocket. In the kitchen, Victoria stood with a mug. "We'll have everything ready soon," she said. "Everything?" "You know," she smiled, "the next chapter. Downsizing, fewer responsibilities, more time to just be." "What do you think I've been doing it?" I asked. Dancing in traffic?" She laughed. "You're funny." When they left, I stepped onto the porch and watched them drive away in my car. I saw Mark adjust the seat, saw the brake lights wink at the corner. I went back inside and wrote it all down. Time, date, the reason given. Later, I checked the gas level against what the trip should have required. It was lower. The next morning at the driving evaluation, a woman with white hair in a tight bun introduced herself as Rita. "I used to race rally," she said. "Nothing scares me." We went through cones in a parking lot, then city streets. She asked me to turn left across traffic, to park between two SUVs, to reverse with mirrors, to change lanes in a construction zone. When I hesitated, she said calmly, "You saw that? Good. That dump truck's drifting. Wait it out." She had the kind of authority that makes you feel safe enough to show what you can do. Afterward, she handed me a letter on thick paper. You're fine, she said. I said, "No, frankly, better than plenty of 50-year-olds I see. You scan, you anticipate, you don't overcorrect. If you want, I'll testify I put the letter in a plastic sleeve and slid it into the folder in my tote. The week after, my stove timer went again while I was stirring jam. I took a video with my phone showing the timer, the flame, my hand turning the knob off, the pot moving off the heat. I narrated the steps out loud like a cooking show, and when the jam set and I left the pot to soak, I called my own landline from my cell and left a message. Jam done, stove off, timestamp. It felt ridiculous. It also felt like building a raft, board by board, while the tide climbs. On Sunday, after church, I set out the good cups and a plate of shortbread. Victoria arrived with lilies and placed them in a vase, filling the room with sweet, almost suffocating scent. Mark came behind her, carrying a white bakery box with a map of the city printed on top. "Thought we'd bring dessert," he said. "I have dessert," I said, "but we'll eat yours too." Lily ran to my arms and squeezed me with a force that makes your bones ring with gratitude. When Lily settled with crayons at the table, Victoria took out a brochure. Sunny Harbor Senior Living. "Just to start thinking," she said. "There are wait lists." "I'll start thinking when I need to," I said. "Thank you." Mark poured coffee. "Mom, will you let me handle your bills?" "Just for a while. You still write checks?" "I like checks," I said. "They're small pieces of ceremony." He smiled. "Let's be practical." It wasn't the practicality I minded. It was the way he lifted my life as if weighing a melon, testing for soft spots he could push with his thumb. That night, a message blinked on my machine. "Hi, this is Miranda. Just confirming our walkthrough for Tuesday at 10, I played it twice. Then I walked across the street to see my neighbor Walt. He used to be a cop. He has a creaky knee and a good memory, and when he laughs, you hear all the nights he didn't laugh because there was nothing in the city worth it. I told him everything as we sat on his porch watching moths hit the light. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he scratched his cheek and said, "You've been building a case." "I've been building a spine," I said. "The case is a bonus." He snorted. "Use both. You know the city bus by the market, the one with the front camera? I probably caught that red light tap." "You think so?" "Sometimes it runs," he said, depending on the route. "I've got a friend I can ask." Meanwhile, that realtor needs to understand the word consent. Make sure any walkthroughs are illegal. So if it comes up, it's weight on your side. Do not, under any circumstances, sign anything. If they bring forms, smile, pour coffee, take your time. 2 days later, I didn't answer the door. I watched from the upstairs hallway through the crack of the spare room door. Victoria's knock was cheerful, then insistent. I let it pass. Later at the clinic, Mei Chen made a note of the voicemail and the attempted entry and asked if I felt safe. I said yes, I did. I felt angrier than afraid, and anger, properly channeled, is ballast. The next Sunday, Mark said he'd take me to the clinic for the new cognitive test. He smiled too broadly. I recognized that smile. It was the one he wore the year he told me he had a plan to invest in a friend's idea, and could he borrow against the house. Daniel had said no, gently but firmly, and Mark hadn't spoken to us for a month. He came around after Lily was born. I never forgot how money made a boy's face harden into something like a stranger's. I tucked the letter from Rita into my bag, the stove video on a thumb drive, the notebook, and the tiny recorder I'd already tested twice. I clicked it on when I slid into the passenger seat. I told myself we were going to the clinic. We turned left. You know the rest of that day's opening, the courthouse, the clerk, the navy-suited woman, the judge. Concerns include missed appointments, near collisions, leaving the stove on, the judge said, reading from the forms Mark had given him. "Your Honor," I said, "may I clarify?" The judge looked over his glasses. He was in his early 60s, I guessed, the age where a man's patience can either be a habit or a strategy. "Proceed, Mrs. Lawson." "Thank you. I have letters from a driving rehabilitation specialist. I have documentation from my primary care physician regarding cognitive screenings. I have a schedule log that clarifies the missed appointment occurred due to the clinic changing addresses without adequate notice. They later apologized. I passed the folder to the bailiff. And I have a video demonstrating the use of a timer and proper stove shutoff. Regarding the near collision, I request the court consider footage from the city bus camera. The police report attributes fault to the driver behind me, who admitted as much at the scene. Mark's jaw clenched, the way it does when he chews tough steak. The judge flipped through the documents, eyebrows twitching at the thick paper of Rita's report. Miss Santoro is well regarded, he said. You brought a comprehensive file, Mrs. Lawson. I'm a teacher, I said. I believe in homework. Victoria sat with her legs crossed, arms folded, a tense smile smoothing the corners of her mouth. Mark stared at the table. The judge leaned back. Mr. Lawson, he said, did you know about these evaluations? Mark blinked. She refused help. I refused to be bullied, I said evenly, and felt Rita's letter in the judge's hands like a warm coin. This court takes driving privileges seriously, the judge continued. It also takes autonomy seriously. I'm not convinced guardianship is appropriate at this time. As for the driver's license, I'm ordering a formal road test with the DMV within 30 days. The letter from Mr. Santoro will be considered, but the DMV will make its own determination. Mrs. Lawson, are you willing to undergo that test? Yes. Good. He set the file down. I will not suspend your license pending that outcome. He glanced at Mark. Mr. Lawson, if your mother passes, these concerns should be put to rest. Mark looked as if he'd swallowed something big the wrong way. But, Your Honor, she's been unpredictable. She didn't answer the door for us last Tuesday. Because you arrived with a realtor, I said. My voice didn't rise. I did not invite a realtor into my home. The judge's eyes flicked to Victoria. Miss Lawson? She arranged her features. We're only trying to help. She's alone. This is a lot to manage, Mrs. Lawson, the judge said. Do you live alone? Yes. Do you feel safe? I do. I paused. I also have concerns about attempts to move forward with real estate without my consent. Then this is outside the immediate scope of today's hearing, he said, but I'll note it. I suggest both parties seek counsel. He tapped his gavel lightly, not the angry strike you see in movies, but a tap like the end of a math problem. Hearing continued pending DM results. Court is adjourned. We filed out. In the hallway, Mark grabbed my elbow. You made me look like a fool. Your paperwork did that, I said. Victoria's voice was low. This is not over. I didn't think it was, I said. That's why I came prepared. At home, I locked the door, set the chain, and stood in the quiet. The house listened with me. Then I called Mei Chen and told her everything. The judge, the continuation, the look on Mark's face like a storm that doesn't know where to break. Good, she said. We keep building. Let's file a notice with your bank to flag unusual transactions. Let's complete the trust paperwork this week. And Ellie? Yes? Don't be alone on test day. I called Walt. He said, I'll be there with a thermos. The DMV test was scheduled for a Tuesday at 8 in the morning. The night before, I ironed a shirt I liked and put my hair in rollers, the way my mother did before weddings. I slept badly and woke early to fog. Walt pulled up at 7:45. He whistled when he saw my folder. Look at you, he said. You could teach a seminar. I have, I said. 5th grade. They were scarier. At the DMV, a woman with a honey-colored braid introduced herself as Marisol. She was brisk but kind, the kind of person who places a pen parallel to a form on instinct. We'll start with a vision check, she said, then rode. She read letters off a chart. I read them back. She nodded at the correction in my glasses prescription and checked a box. On the road, she asked me to turn left across traffic into a grocery parking lot. I waited for a safe gap. She asked me to parallel park behind a van. I did. She asked me to make a 3-point turn on a narrow street. I counted my points aloud. When we came back, Marisol signed the form. You passed, she said, with points to spare. I sat still while relief soaked me like rain. Walt clapped my shoulder once, a small, dignified victory tap. I looked at the clock, 8:37. At 9, as we drove past the market, Walt's phone buzzed. He spoke into it. "Yeah, forward it." "Thanks," he grinned. "Buscam had it, clear as day. Kid, rear-ended you. You were a model driver. I'll print the file." Back home, I set the new license on the table next to the bananas. I brewed tea, my hands shook. It wasn't fear anymore. It was an awareness that I had stepped onto firmer ground, and the people trying to herd me off it would come back harder. They did. That Friday, my bank called. A woman named Carmen, courtesy embedded in her tone like gold leaf in an old frame, told me a loan application had popped up tied to my address. "A home equity line," she said. The system flagged a mismatch in signature samples. "Who applied?" I asked, though I knew. "The name on the form is yours," she said. "But the SSN is wrong by 2 digits, which is often a sign of someone who knows your number and guessed." "Do not process it," I said. "I did not apply." "Of course." She paused. "Mrs. Lawson, do you have someone who helps you with your finances?" "I help me," I said, "with counsel." After we hung up, I dialed Mark. He didn't answer. I left a message. "A loan application appeared in my name. This is illegal. Do not come to my home. If you have something to say it through a lawyer." Then I called Mei Chen. "Heloc attempt," she repeated. "We'll send a letter to the bank confirming fraud and copy Mark and Victoria's counsel. We'll also file a police report. You can be kind for family. The law doesn't have to be..." That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I looked through the window. Victoria stood on the porch in sunglasses, her phone in one hand like a weapon. I didn't open the door. "Ellie," she called, voice soft, "we should talk." "We will," I said, through the closed door, "with lawyers." "You're blowing this out of proportion. You tried to borrow against a house you don't own." "That's a misunderstanding." "Of forgery?" I asked. "A common misunderstanding." She laughed, brittle. "You think you're untouchable?" "No," I said. "I think I'm not alone." She leaned close to the door. "If you do this, you won't see Lily." I felt the air leave my lungs in a slow, cold rope. I swallowed. "Don't use her as a lever." "Then stop making this ugly." "Leave my porch," I said. When she was gone, I sat with the recorder between my palms. I had captured her threat. I let myself cry then, briefly, efficiently, the way you rinse sand from your shoes after the beach. Then I washed my face, made a sandwich, and called Walt. He came over with a toolbox and installed a small camera above my door. "Smile for the birds," he said. That's what we called it when we looked up and knew we were being watched. At church on Sunday, I lit a candle for Daniel and another for Patience. After the service, I found Lily in the courtyard with her Sunday school class gluing beads onto paper plates to make sun signs. She ran to me. "Nana, look!" She held up her shimmering sun. Victoria stepped out of the hall, saw us, and froze, calculating. I bent and kissed Lily's forehead. "I love your art," I said. "It looks like light." "I'm going to put it on my wall," she said. "You should." Every morning it'll be sunrise. Victoria put a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Say goodbye to Nana. We're late." "Can she come over?" Lily asked. "For Rummy?" "Not today," Victoria said. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. "We're very busy." "Soon," I said to Lily. "Soon." Monday morning, the police called to schedule a statement regarding the attempted loan. "Bring any documentation," the officer said. "We'll take it to the DA if necessary." Mei Chun met me there. She wore a navy blazer with a silver pin shaped like a fountain pen. She spread my folder on the desk. The officer listened. He looked at the bus footage, at the bank letter, at the voicemail from Miranda, at the text messages where Victoria asked for my social for insurance paperwork. He took notes with a patience that comforted me. When we finished, May said, "There will be a civil lane and possibly a criminal lane. We'll stay in both. Will I see Lily?" "Not immediately," she said, "but a judge doesn't like to see a child used as a pawn. You've kept every conversation calm. That matters." The next hearing was set for 3 weeks later, a continuation to determine whether the initial petition for guardianship would be withdrawn and whether any temporary orders would be appropriate given the bank situation. I marked the date in red on my calendar like a holiday. Between then and now, I did ordinary things with extraordinary attention. I changed the oil in my car. I replaced batteries in the smoke detectors. I brought soup to Mrs. Holcomb next door after her cataract surgery and watered her ferns. I read to Lily's class at school from a book about a stubborn goat who refused to leave the mountain. When Mrs. Alvarez thanked Lily's grandma for her voice that makes the children sit up straight, I felt my throat tighten with a strange mixture of pride and grief. On the Friday before the hearing, Miranda the realtor called again. "We need to talk," she said, voice lower, almost embarrassed. "Your daughter-in-law told me you'd agreed to list the house. She had me draw up paperwork." "I'm sorry. I should have insisted on your presence. Bring the paperwork," I said. "Bring the emails. Bring your memory. You may be needed." The following Tuesday, Walt and I drove to court. He wore a tie so wide it had to be vintage and carried a thermos that smelled of peppermint tea. Mei-Chen met us on the steps. She looked tired in the way good lawyers look when they've carried the weight of other people's fear for too many hours, but her eyes were bright. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller, somehow, or maybe I had outgrown it. Mark sat at the table with a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Victoria wore a cream blouse and pearls. She looked like a picture of restraint. The judge nodded at us. "We're here on a continued petition. I've read the DMV results." He read them again. "Into the record. Passed." "Mr. Italian Lawson," the judge said, turning to my son, "do you wish to proceed with your petition for guardianship?" Mark's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, based on new information regarding financial irregularities, we have concerns." May stood too. "Your Honor, we have documentation that those irregularities were attempted in my client's name without her knowledge. The bank flagged them and alerted her. We filed a police report." The judge's eyebrows lifted. "Do you have evidence?" "Yes," May said. "We also have a recording of Mrs. Lawson threatening to withhold contact with her daughter if my client makes this ugly. Additionally, a realtor is prepared to testify. She was brought into Mrs. Lawson's home without her consent and asked to prepare listing documents." Miranda stood from the back. For the first time since this began, Victoria's composure wavered, a ripple in a glass of water. The judge sighed. It was a human sound, not theatrical. "Counselors, approach." They did. They murmured. He leaned forward. Then he sat back. "We will recess for 15 minutes, he said. "When we return, I expect a narrower proceeding." In the hallway, Mark approached me. "Mom," he said softly. He looked tired suddenly, older than his years. "This is spiraling." "You set it in motion," I said. "We can fix it. Just let us handle things, sell the house, move into Sunny Harbor. We'll visit. You'll see Lily all the time." "If I sign the house over—" "No." He tried to look offended. "That's not what I'm saying." "What are you saying?" He swallowed. "We're in debt." "Not my debt," I said. "Yours." "I know," he said, voice raw. "I made a mistake. A few. I thought—" He glanced down the hall where Victoria and her attorney spoke in urgent whispers. "I thought there'd be a bonus at work. I thought the market would turn. I thought I could borrow and pay it back and you'd never know." "Is that why you tried to take my license?" I asked. "To make me smaller so the loss of place would feel like care?" He winced. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." He pressed his fingers to his forehead. For a second, I saw my boy again, the one who scraped his knee and insisted he didn't cry because boys don't. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I can't undo it." "You can stop it from getting worse." "How?" "Tell the truth." He shook his head. "You don't know Victoria." "I know enough." The 15 minutes were up. In the courtroom, the judge's gaze was steady. "Here is my ruling," as he said. "The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice." I exhaled. a sound so quiet it felt private, like whispering grace. Further, the judge continued, this court will issue a temporary protective order preventing the sale, lying, or encumbrance of Mrs. Lawson's residence without her express notarized consent. Any attempt to do so will be considered contempt. Regarding potential financial fraud, that matter is referred to the district attorney's office. As for parenting time, this court will not insert itself. However, I advise all parties that using a child as leverage in any dispute is abhorrent and reflects poorly on one's credibility in related proceedings. He looked at Victoria then, a look that said, I have seen people like you in different costumes. Mrs. Lawson, he said to me, is there anything you want to say for the record? Yes, I said. Thank you. Outside, May hugged me. Walt shook my hand as if I had just retired from a distinguished post. We walked down the steps into the sunlight. It was stark, almost white, and I had to shade my eyes. It's not over, May said. There may be plea offers, restitution, but the big rock is out of the road. I know, I said, and I'm tired. Sleep. Let me carry the next steps. I slept. Not that day. I was too wired. But that night, I slept the sleep of a person who has held the line and knows it will hold until morning. In the weeks that followed, Seattle-level rain fell and my grass turned emerald. I kept driving, to the grocery store, to church, to the library, where I checked out books I'd been saving for later. Later had arrived. One afternoon, Lily appeared on my porch with a school art project, cheeks pink and eyes bright. Daddy said I could bring it to you while Mommy's at yoga, she said. Mark stood behind her, hands in his pockets. Come in, I said. Do you want lemonade? Lily nodded. Mark hovered in the doorway like a man who has never been certain where to put his feet. I poured lemonade and set out cookies. Lily arranged her beads on the table and began to talk in the unstoppable way of children. A friend's lost tooth, the thrill of field day, a frog discovered behind the school dumpsters. Her voice was sunlight. When she went to wash her hands, Mark cleared his throat. I'm talking to a counselor, he said. Someone at church recommended his name. I thought you should know. Good, I said. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't offer it like a coupon, I said. It's not something you cash. He looked at the coat rack where Daniel's hat still hangs. I miss him, he said suddenly. I do too, I said. Every day. He nodded, eyes bright, then blinked and swallowed whatever threatened to come out. He took a breath. I've got a job with overtime, he said. We're cutting expenses. I sold the boat. You had a boat? Kayaks, he said, and smiled briefly. Nothing fancy. Victoria thought. He stopped. I know what Victoria thinks, I said. What do you think? He looked at Lily's beads. I think I want my daughter to see me tell the truth and stand up straight, even when it's ugly. That's a good thought. He nodded again, as if committing the sentence to memory. He and Victoria separated 2 weeks later. He told me in a voice like paper tearing. She says it's because I humiliated her, he said. I think it's because there's no more money to squeeze. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not saying I'm a victim. I made choices, but also, she knew where to push. I didn't gloat. You think you will, after what was done to you, but victory tastes like clean water, not champagne. It fills you without burning. The district attorney's office sent a letter. Charges for attempted fraud would be considered if further evidence emerged. In the meantime, a warning had been issued and the bank had placed a permanent freeze on any third-party applications. Carmen from the bank called to say she'd personally put a post-it on my file. Not literally, she said with a small laugh, but you know what I mean. In August, after the raspberries finished and the tomatoes went crazy, I called May and told her I wanted to finalize the trust. I want to make things simple when I'm gone, I said, and complicated for anyone who tries to make them simple before I am. She laughed. We can do that. I created a living trust that holds the house. It lists Lily as the eventual beneficiary, with a clause that requires she be 30 before she sells, and a line that allows her to live in it if she wants for up to 2 years after college, rent-free if she maintains the place. There's a no-contest clause for all others. The trust requires any sale to be approved by me And a successor trustee, May, so no one can lean on me in a weak moment. I updated my will. I named Walt guardian of my cat Ida because he pretends to dislike her, but she sleeps on his shoes. When we signed, May said, you're the opposite of helpless. Helplessness is a sweater other people try to put on you, I said. I prefer cotton. I kept driving, but less that, not because I had to, because I chose to. I took the bus to the Saturday market and found I liked the way conversations flowed across the aisle like dandelion fluff. I walked to the library and realized I had never gone that route on foot, and it was beautiful. A yard with peonies like pink clouds, a house with a porch swing painted robin's egg blue, a tiny free library shaped like a lighthouse. Freedom takes different shapes as you age. The trick is to recognize the new ones as still freedom. On my 72nd birthday, I invited friends for rummy. I made lemon cake and set out the nice plates. Walt brought flowers. May brought a bottle of sparkling cider. Lily came with Mark, who had a gift bag with tissue paper like seafoam and a card with a sketch of a car on it. Mine. I drew this, Lily said proudly. Daddy helped with the wheels? It's perfect, I said, and meant it. I put it on the fridge next to the crayon heart she'd given me last year. I didn't think about Victoria or how a person looks at a home and sees a balance sheet instead of a life. I thought about how a table makes a circle of people equal. After dessert, I stood and tapped my glass. I have an announcement, I said. Everyone looked up, expecting something upbeat. I smiled. I passed the DMV test months ago, I said. You all know that. What you don't know is this. I'm going to stop driving in the winter. Why? Lily asked, eyes wide. Because I want to, I said. Because the roads get mean when they're slick and dark, and I don't like doing surgery on mean roads anymore. Because I can get pretty much everywhere I want by bus or with friends. Because sometimes choosing is the last, best freedom. Mark studied me. Are you sure? I'm sure. The next morning, I walked to the transit office and bought a senior pass for the year. The clerk handed it to me like a subway token from a city I had never visited. I slid it into a new spot in my wallet behind Daniel's photo. He smiled at me from the hood of the Buick, forever proud, forever holding the tools we'd used to keep ourselves running. When I got home, I put my car keys in a small glass bowl by the door. I would still use them, of course, in spring and summer and early fall, but now the bowl had an extra purpose. It reminded me that everything you own should fit into a container you control. That evening, the phone rang. It was Miranda. I wanted to apologize, she said, properly. I should never have stepped into your house without you there. I should have known better. You know now, I said. I do, she said. And I hope you'll forgive me. I do, I said, and meant it. You've helped more than you hurt. Your emails spoke loudly enough. Happy birthday, she said. I hope someone made you cake. They did. I hung up, poured tea, and sat by the window. A small fox crossed the yard, quick and bright, a lick of flame against the dark. I thought about the court, about letters and recordings, and the way a voice can be a bridge over a pit that other people dig for you. I thought about Lily's son, beads glued in a ring around a paper plate, the simplest possible sky. I thought about Mark's face when he said, I'm sorry. A person is the sum of their choices, but also the sum of what they do after. A week later, I got a small card in the mail from the DA's office. The investigation into the loan application had concluded with a formal warning and a notation in the financial fraud database. It wouldn't put money back where it hadn't gone. But it laid a trail. Trails matter. They tell the next person what happened here. In September, as the air sharpened and school buses blinked their yellow caution through morning fog, I drove to the co-op on Maple. I stood in a one-bedroom corner unit that smelled of fresh paint and cedar closets. The building is for people 55 and older. The hallways have benches shaped like commas, places to pause but not stop. There's a garden on the roof with herbs and raised boxes and a view of the river like a ribbon unspooling toward somewhere easier. The director showed me the laundry room with machines that don't require quarters. We have a guest room residents can reserve, she said, for family visits. I'm not moving, I said. Not now. I put my palm against the window where the light pooled. But I wanted to know where I'd go if I did. I want the choice to feel like a door I open, not a door someone closes behind me. She nodded. That's why most people come. On the way home, I took the long route by the park where Daniel used to jog. I parked and walked the path he loved, slow, steady, counting my breaths. At the pond, a boy tossed bread to ducks with sloppy, joyous aim. His mother laughed and tried to teach him to tear smaller pieces. I stood under the sycamore and put my hand on the bark. It felt like the skin of an old elbow, soft, wrinkled, trustworthy. When I got home, Mark was on my porch sitting on the top step like he used to when he was 12 and had stayed out too late and knew. We knew. I brought you something, he said, lifting a brown bag. Chowder. There's a new place by the river. Thought you'd like it. We ate in the kitchen, and he told me about his overtime, about paying down what he called the great backyard disaster, money they had sunk into fancy landscaping that never looked like the pictures. He told me about cooking for Lily on nights when Victoria works late, and how he'd learned to make fried rice that actually tastes good. He looked lighter, he looked heavier. Both can be true. Do you ever think about selling? He asked suddenly. This place? Every day, I said. But not for the reasons you did. Not because it scares me, because sometimes a new life is easier in a new space. He nodded. I get that. If I do, it will be my idea, on my time. I know. He held my gaze. I know that now. When he left, he hugged me with both arms, and for the first time in a long time, I believed we might have a future that wasn't a negotiation. Winter came early. I put my car in the garage and hung the keys on a hook, the way you hang a coat at the end of a season. I took the bus to Lily's holiday recital and sat in the second row while she sang about stars. After the concert, she ran to me. Nana, did you see? I didn't forget any words I saw, I said. You were flawless. On the ride home, a man my age with a newspaper folded into fourths looked at the senior pass on my lanyard. First winter without driving? He asked. Yes. Feels strange, he said. Then it feels normal. Then it feels like you've been given back a part of the world you missed while you were watching the road. I smiled. That's poetic. Sometimes I am, he said, and returned to his paper. On New Year's Day, I opened my notebook and turned to a fresh page. I wrote, I am the size of my decisions. I am not the size of anyone else's fear. I taped Lily's son to the inside cover. I made a list of names: May, Walt, Carmen, Marisol, Rita, people who had put their shoulders to the boulder alongside mine. None of this had been cinematic. It had been calls and letters and steady hands. It had been the dull work of endurance that sometimes looks like nothing from the outside but feels like a revelation from within. In March, the DA's office called to say the warning had escalated to a misdemeanor charge after they connected similar attempts in two other names, not mine. Two other grandmothers. Victoria had been busy. There would be a hearing. I went. I sat in the back. She entered in a blazer I'd seen before and a face that refused to register the fact that consequences are a kind of weather. She pleaded to a lesser charge, paid a fine, and left quickly, eyes forward. She didn't look at me. I didn't need her to. Outside the courthouse, the same glass doors that had shown like betrayal months ago, Mark waited with Lily. She held my hand. He said, "Thank you for coming." He meant it. "Walk with me," I said, and we crossed the square toward the bus stop. The sky was a blank page. The bus hissed to a halt. We climbed on. In late spring, I wrote a letter to my younger self. I told her about the ways people will try to make you small and how you will grow anyway. I told her to keep receipts, literal ones and the other kind. I told her she would be 72 and alive and sometimes lonely and often content. I told her that a car is not a life and a house is not a heart, and that even when someone you love tries to take either, you can keep both by remembering who you are. I tucked the letter into the back of my notebook. It was for me, really. It always had been. One evening, as the sun set in a color that made the word apricot seem like a humble request, Walt came over with 2 mugs. We sat on the steps and listened to crickets. "You did good," he said. "I did stubborn," I said. "Same thing when it's pointed in the right direction." I looked at the street where my car would sleep until the thaw. I thought about the day my son took me to court and how close I came to being handed the smallest version of my life, politely wrapped. I thought about how, instead, I handed myself something larger: choice, plan, a network of other people's competence and my own. "Little did they know," I said softly. "What's that?" Walt asked. "Nothing," I smiled. "Just a line my husband used to say when people underestimated him. Smart man." "He was," I said. "And he'd be proud that I didn't let anyone shrink me." Spring turned to summer. The lemon tree I coax each year into producing exactly 2 lemons surprised me with 4. I used them for cake and for the iced tea we drank after rummy. Sometimes Mark joined us, sometimes he didn't. He was rebuilding stone by stone. I didn't supervise. That's another lesson you learn late, if you're lucky. On the anniversary of the court hearing, I drove, yes, drove, out to the lake where Daniel once taught Lily to skip stones. I parked, walked to the shore, and threw a flat rock. It danced twice, then sank. I said out loud, to the water, to the sky, to the woman who walked into a courtroom and refused to hand herself over, "Here I am." Then I turned back toward the path, keys in my pocket, bus pass around my neck, the whole town open to me the way it always had been. If only I remembered to claim it.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.